Good morning, bonjour. I'm happy to be back. Happy Friday. Happy payday for the people of the University of Ottawa. Thank you. Welcome to this conversation. This is a fireside chat. There's no fireplace, but it is a fireside chat, meaning that if all goes well, I won't be intervening too much. Our guests here have a lot of insight and experience to share. I will only intervene if a fight breaks out or something like that, but otherwise they will fill you with their wisdom and ideas and insights for the next 20 minutes or so. We have with us today probably two of the best and brightest people in the Canadian defense industry to discuss the topic of driving industry excellence in defense. Mr. Steve Patrick, Vice President, Bombardier Defense since 2017, right? Well known in the aerospace industry, 30 years of experience in both civilian and military programs, right? Also very familiar with multi-million-dollar budgets. We're not that familiar with that at the University of Ottawa, but I'm glad you are. We also have Mr. Roman Shimonov here, CEO, founder, and owner of Roshel Defense Solutions, a very interesting company doing smart armored vehicles, but many other things as well, as Mr. Shimonov will describe. And I think it's worth mentioning that Roman was named Defense Executive of the Year 2025 by the Canadian Defense Review. So there we are. Just to set the stage for the conversation, as I said, then I'll step back a bit. It seems to me that we have an alignment of the stars, if I may say, that we don't often see, and that creates great opportunities for the defense sector, leading to economic benefits for the entire country, of course. And those four stars that I've identified anyway is, number one, the great geopolitical volatility that we are seeing lately. Number two, technological advances. And of course, here we're talking AI, quantum, okay? I'm sure those technologies have an impact on your industries. Incoming budgets or promised money for national defense and CAF, which is not something we often hear. It's even hard to say it because we have to practice saying this, but more money for national defense. And then I would put a fourth one in there, which is climate change or climate volatility, because it does have impact on the Arctic, meaning that Canada's strategy is, in part very much directed to the Arctic, and again, implications for both your companies. First question, of course, is: do you agree with this assessment? Am I completely off track with that, or are we basically sharing the same observation?
I think we're seeing a very similar observation from Bombardier's perspective. There's a new narrative that national security and economic security go hand in hand. So a lot of the changing dynamics in the political world, or a lot of the new threats that are emerging, they're driving innovation and demands into industry. It's not just defense industry that's benefiting from that, though it is all of the adjacencies in the overall Canadian economy. So I think there's a definite new dynamic at play because of the politics, and that's creating a necessity for innovation. Things that we used to consider in the past as being a reasonable defense mechanism are no longer relevant. So you have to look at threats through a new perspective. You have to come up with new, innovative solutions to those threats. And also, to your point, the changing climate perspective of the Arctic now becoming much more of a contested space. That's causing, I think, the defense industry to look for new ways of satisfying that need for the Canadian government.
Yeah, absolutely agree with your assessment. I believe that stars are aligned. And now the biggest problem is not the innovation, is not the resources. The biggest problem is the time. And time is limited, and I believe we need to talk much less and act much more. We don't have the privilege to wait for another opportunity. We have an amazing access to minerals. We have an amazing geopolitical position. We have a government finally that took steps and made some decisions that definitely are going to help, not just with our security at the border, at the northern border, but overall in defense industry. And with this instability in the world, I believe that Canada can play a much bigger role if we will start acting.
I think it's an observation we've seen with a lot of our conversations is that customers are looking for something called capability at the speed of relevance. you have to be able to deliver a solution or a product quickly, because the environment changes so quickly that if you take 5, 10, 15 years to develop something, it's obsolete. So there really is now a pressure on industry to perform much more quickly, much more nimbly, to develop capabilities at the speed of relevance.
And so to play devil's advocate a bit, can we do that? I mean, you are both working in very, very, complex equipments, complex products that cannot be, you can't just switch the supply chain or the manufacturing chain overnight. It would normally take 10 years to reconfigure your systems, and yet there's a sense of urgency, to your point, to deliver real quick at high quality.
Whether we can or we cannot, we're already doing that. Since 2016, when we started the production, we became the largest manufacturer of armored vehicles. We're able to ramp up the production to a number that no one else can meet or exceed. We became the largest supplier of armored vehicles, not because of the support or because of the available resource, but because of the initiative we took to increase the production, to invest into the right way to create a vertical production where there is no dependency on logistic, on supply chain, on certain tariff-related components. And this is something that I think a lot of private-owned companies and companies that are more agile, that can react quickly, and I agree with you that that's the key, is not to wait for the certain signal, but rather than taking an action, proactively trying to penetrate new markets, introduce new innovative solutions, and hit the market with the product that can be repetitive, that can be fast, easy to support, and cost-effective. And if we have, or once we were able to achieve that, we're able to continue increasing the portfolio and continue increasing the market where we are penetrating and pushing the products to.
So you're hopeful, you're confident that...
we are doing that already.
And you're
so yes,
already.
The answer is yes.
I think just to build on Roman's point, industry is very much capable of the rapid innovation, the rapid delivery. What we're now seeing in Canada is the political commitment at the highest levels to execute some of those procurement policies. The challenge is executing them, because there is a process for government procurement that is not designed for the current environment. It's very much more a longer-term strategic process. What we now need is something that is much more flexible and agile. And some of the recent changes in the Canadian government are very encouraging. The new Defence Procurement Agency, the new focus that's coming from multiple ministries. We see it not just in Canada, we see it in other countries. There is a recognition of the need to rapidly procure, and they are trying to find other transactional authorities, other mechanisms to make that desire become a reality. It's clear that industry is capable. The willingness from government is there at the highest level. You just have to connect those two dots.
So defense procurement has up to now been a barrier, essentially. Or is that an overstatement?
I wouldn't call it a barrier. I think the defense procurement system is designed for a purpose. The purpose needs to evolve with the needs.
Interesting. You speak like a good politician, Minister of Defense, maybe.
The speed is also important, especially in the procurement processes, where sometimes it takes so long that by the time the award is given, the product that has been ordered is already outdated.
Yeah.
And the previous panel, Turkey, is an amazing example how the country took some initiatives while back, and today they have one of the most advanced defense sector, where the entire process is done in-house. They supply to themselves most of the components, starting from ceramics, ballistic steel, and other components. And this is exactly where we took the initiative without waiting. We noticed that Canada never had its own ballistic steel manufacturing. And we partnered up with the company out of Sweden, and there are only few countries in the world that have the recipe. And we took the initiative by investing hundreds of millions of dollars that we're going to allocate into this and create our own supply chain, where the entire process, starting from the ballistic steel, transparent armoring, wheels, handles, everything, basically all of the thousands of components will be made here in Canada.
So a Canadian supply chain, basically from start to end, or
Correct.
Or just about. Now, this being said, are you Are you also seeing approaches or openings in other countries for collaborations? For like, you're talking about the Swedes, Turkey is opening the door to collaboration. Is collaboration on the table in order to expedite, again, the delivery of what's expected?
Absolutely. I mean, I think everyone would recognize that the largest defense market available to us all is the United States. So there is always going to be collaboration between Canada and the United States through political and military alliances. The industrial collaboration across the border is very strong. But what we are seeing very clearly is a reinvestment in European defense capabilities. The Rearm Europe initiative is creating a lot of potential opportunities across all the domains of land, sea, and air. And Canada is in a great position to participate in Rearm Europe. We're seen as an attractive source of supply for capabilities. So Europe certainly has lots of growth potential for us. And most of the current geopolitical concern, let's call it, is in the Pacific region. So a lot of countries in the Indo-PACOM region, as you start to think of adjacencies to the Philippine Straits and adjacencies to the South Pacific, there's great opportunity down there. So delivering new capabilities is not just a commercial transaction. There's often a strategic element of developing local industrial capabilities, local businesses. So to the extent that different countries want to build their own defense industry, Canadian companies can help them do that through collaboration, through joint ventures, and whether that be technology transfer or production transfer, there's a real opportunity to develop jointly, to bring forward products that meet the needs not just of Canada, but multiple partners and allies, and ultimately strengthen and diversify the industrial base for the benefit of all.
The defense sector is a very fluctuating sector where you have orders that can come as a peak and then you need to wait for the next one. And the only way to create a sustainable cash flow is to be able to rely on several markets and being able to be as agile as possible with the ability to serve different regions. And we share a lot with the Bombardier Defense, where both of us are Canadian companies that rely on local orders, but mostly on the export. And when it comes to export, there are some evolving markets, and every country has its own needs and unique requirements. And being able to address those markets definitely helps, not just in selling and creating the revenues, but also in getting the IP and knowledge and unique expertise that alone would take much longer to achieve. Second point, just quickly, the war in Ukraine allows companies that are integrated and have the experience to shorten the time to gain the expertise, because whatever you do in the combat zone would take you with the simulations and with tests probably decades. And here, in a matter of 3 years, we were able to achieve certain results that definitely would take us much longer, and without the need to invest rather than in labs and simulations, we're able to test and do the adaptations and modification on an ongoing basis. So this type of cooperations and the ability to get the feedbacks from the end users allows to create a product that, if historically Canada used to buy from certain European countries, now a Canadian company sells to them. And that's something that we take as a huge pride.
It's also an important aspect when it comes to selling to other countries. When we're in dialogue with potential customers, one of the questions they usually have for us is, how many does Canada operate? You know, is your own government a customer of your products? So in order for our companies to be successful internationally, having the support of our own government is important. And so we look to them to not only be a national champion for us, but they help us with our export potential as well.
This is very reassuring and glad to hear. So what we're saying here is that we have Canadian capacity. There's a possibility of having Canadian supply chain. At the same time, an openness to collaborate with other countries and they're open to working with us. Compatibility, interoperability, is that an issue? Is that yet another barrier, or has that pretty much been dealt with over the last few years?
I think the interoperability, interchangeability conversation is something that comes up in a recurring basis as the allied forces go into a campaign together. It's important that they can all be connected, that they can all share information, share data, share systems. technology is advancing at a rapid pace. If we think back 10, 15 years, you would have large airliners flying around with massive computers in them to process and share data. Now you can do that in something the size of an iPhone. And those iPhones are obviously open system architecture. You can share applications, you can share data. Much of what we see in the future for certainly airborne defense applications is an open system architecture where data can be sourced from multiple different platforms, shared within a network for the benefit of all allies. So the interoperability, interchangeability problem is just really a data problem, and being able to make sure that you can share that information with your allies. For sure, common equipment is a beneficial thing, to have access to common spares, access to common logistics. But the more that we bring our product to market, both as a defense product and as a commercial product, that logistics chain is there, it's available. So I think that the ability to be interoperable and interchangeable, the definition of that is evolving with time as well.
Yeah. Interesting, very interesting.
I think the main gap is not on the technical side, but rather on the ability of the government to create the awareness among the allies about these brilliant and unique capabilities that Canadian companies offer. And this is where I think this gap can be improved and become much smaller if the government will take an initiative and will create an awareness within the allies to promote the companies. And this will be extremely beneficial.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we've got 5-7 minutes ago. Looking 5-10 years ahead, what will distinguish a leading defense company from the rest? I mean, is it around technology, agility, resilience? Is it alliances? What will make a company, stand out in terms of efficiency?
I think it's all of the above. There is no one factor that you can set and say that this what will give you the advantage. The advantage is in being able to have, first of all, resources to implement, develop, test, certify the product, being able to offer it to the market, to be able to sustain it. In Canada, it would be extremely important to engage with the indigenous communities, with being able to create a supply chain where we are less dependent on the southern neighbor, but more open to other markets like the Indo-Pacific and the European markets, where there are a lot to offer. And once we have this ability to create a product that can be developed and integrated with the modern and innovative solutions, in our case, vehicles that can be equipped with counter-drone systems or with electro-optical solutions, including different capabilities that we work with different companies, and we offer a wider package. That's what leads the market and allows companies like ourselves to open new markets and create a sustainable Canadian business that at the end, the economy is benefiting from higher taxes and more jobs, and overall, more prosperous operation.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the keys is going to be agility. The requirements and the environment are evolving so quickly that you cannot assume that the current organizational structures, the current capabilities, the current supply chains are what you will need in the future. So a successful company in 5 or 10 years is going to be very agile. It's going to capture the best of Canada across all of the provinces. There's a wealth of talent in different areas of the country that we need to tap into. If we think about technology and where that's heading, more autonomy, more use of artificial intelligence, not just in terms of the platform control, but also sensors and, as I mentioned earlier on, the data, how you capture, analyze, and distribute that data, that's going to be the key to the future. So understanding where AI can help us, how we can reduce the burden on the human and maximize the capability of the product. Companies that can capture that are going to be really successful.
There we go. Can we throw in a question to get your thoughts on Arctic? I mean, we have to talk about the Arctic. General Rick Hillier tells us it's all about the Arctic going forward. But he was lamenting the fact that he says we don't have the equipment to manage and secure Arctic sovereignty, if you will, and Arctic security. He was talking, for example, about underwater surveillance and unmanned submarines. Rejoicing in the fact that we might be buying new submarines now. But he said, but why put people down underwater? These could be unmanned, and drones. We heard yesterday that we can have underwater drones sitting there, and, being used as needed. Are your companies looking into that? Is Arctic technology, if I can call it that, on the agenda?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the highest priorities for our company. And as a matter of fact, we took the initiative and we partnered up with a company called ST Engineering from Singapore, largest defense company in Singapore. And we basically, rather than reselling a product, we signed an agreement, an exclusive one, to take their tracked vehicle that will be entirely produced in Canada. So we basically got the IP, and rather than just reselling or buying and keeping the taxpayers' money abroad, it will remain in Canada. We already submitted our proposal, where the entire fleet can be built in Canada using and utilizing Canadian capabilities.
Fascinating.
And we believe that this project, this product that is not going to be only for surveillance, but also for different evacuation and humanitarian operations, it's a very versatile platform that entirely will be built in Canada with Canadian components.
That's fascinating.
I think obviously with the climate change and the opening of the Arctic shipping routes through the Northwest Passage, there's clearly a need to have persistent surveillance of the Arctic. And being such a vast area, you can do that in multiple ways, but clearly one of the most efficient ways is airborne surveillance. And whether that's manned or unmanned assets. Certainly from our perspective, we look at capabilities we already have with partner companies that we work with that can give that surveillance of vast areas. But we do see a need to bring in more unmanned capabilities. If you think of how you best use your resources, both capital and human, if all you really need is persistent surveillance, unmanned vehicles can do that very effectively without pulling in too many of your armed forces personnel. But when you need to have eyes on the target, then you can bring in the manned assets. So as a company, we're looking at ways to enable surveillance of the high Arctic, to enable operations in austere airfields, to be present with people when we need to, but also to bring in unmanned teaming assets when it makes sense to do so. And I think there are a number of opportunities for Canadian companies in particular to participate in that, whether it be through the data management, the enabling technology, the sensors, the support. It really is quite a large puzzle to solve, but it's well within the capabilities of companies like Bombardier and other Canadian SMEs. We already know how to operate aircraft in harsh environments.
Right.
We already know how to support the Canadian winter.
Right.
The Arctic is just the next step in that.
Right. And presumably Scandinavian countries would be natural partners in that world. This is fascinating. This is leaves me with a very optimistic feeling that the Canadian defense industry, I mean, if it's led by people like you, I think we're in good hands. It's a reassuring message because, yeah, there is a sense of urgency. Always worried that, all this extra money will go elsewhere because we don't have the capacity here. You've told us today that we do have that capacity and we're able to turn around fast in partnership with other countries, but we can do our own thing here. This is a very uplifting program and a good way to end the week there at the end of the conference, if you will. Thank you so much for your help. Thank you for your wisdom and for sharing it with us. Thank you very much to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.